Motii acknowledges the traditional owners of country throughout Australia. We pay our respects to elders past and present and acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the first peoples of this land. Welcome to the Motii Playbook. If you've ever felt like your systems are technically in place, but somehow still feel chaotic behind the scenes, you're in the right spot. This is where we share what we're seeing, what's working, what's not, and the lessons businesses learn the hard way. Think of it as practical strategy straight from the trenches. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to another Motii Playbook mini episode where we tackle the questions we get asked the most and give you the answers straight. I'm Katie, marketing and brand strategist for Motii, and I'm joined again by Motii's original co-founder and CRM expert, Ben Fuller. Welcome back, Ben.
Good morning, Katie.
And in our last mini episode, we talked about what a CRM actually is. We even defined that acronym, folks, how it stacks up against spreadsheets, PS, not very well, and how to know if you're ready. And today we're going to dive into the stuff that nobody really warns you about. And that's around return on investment, ROI timelines, why implementations fail, and whether or not you should consider a partner or you can DIY it, do it all yourself. So again, I think we are very well placed having you on this episode, Ben, having done over 1,000 implementations and 5,000 demos.
Oh, don't remind me. Oh my God.
So let's dive in, right? Let's
Okay,
go right
let's
at
do
the
it.
start. So How long does it actually take to see a return on investment from a CRM?
You took the words right out of my mouth, which is how long is a piece of string? Look, it is a complex question in a sense that it really depends on the size of your business, the complexity of your business, the humans that work at your business. Are they tech savvy? Are they going to adopt easily? Are they flexible? Or are they a bunch of 60-year-old blokes who hate the thought of opening a computer and are probably never going to do it? And so it really does depend. But let's talk typical. I think let's talk typical, right? So your typical business, let's say there's 20 staff. Let's say there's 4 or 5 salespeople, a bunch of admins, some accounting people, and then the people who fulfill the orders, whatever those orders might be, right?
Okay. Yep.
I think a typical business like that can see a return, an ROI, at the end of the first full month, right? So let's say that you go live at the end of March.
Yep.
And the team's properly trained up and they start using the system. Yeah, it's a little bit clunky for them to begin with. They're trying to get used to everything and stuff like that. But as part of the implementation, you would have got all their existing data, put it into the system. You've provided them with a video-based training manual. You've given them some live training sessions. They've asked all the questions that they need to, and they're now starting to do 2 things: record their interactions by way of activities and notes in the system, and then create the follow-up for it. And it's really that creating the follow-up for the next thing that they need to do within their role within the business that creates that ROI, right? Because less things slip through the cracks, and it means that more deals are closed, higher conversion rates, all of that type of stuff. And so I think that the answer is at the end of the first full month, so 30 days, you can, and look, Katie, this depends on the length of your sales cycle.
Of course.
So if your sales cycle is 6 months long, then look, the ROI is not like true return on investment is not going to be there until you start closing the deals related to the implementation of the CRM, right?
Yeah.
But, and so, okay, you've got to be a little bit flexible with the interpretation of meaning of ROI in this example, right?
Of course.
I think 30 days, you'll start to see the results, the positive results of the CRM implementation, if not the actual return on investment.
Yeah, once you've got that set up and people are using it. And I guess the using it factor and some of the other things you touched on really leads us to our next question, which is why do so many CRM implementations fail?
The main reason CRM implementations fail is, well, there's 2 reasons. One, people try to cram too much into going live in phase 1. Right? They try to build a finished product, and the adoption for the shivers that work at the companies that have to use the system, the adoption curve is so steep that people begin pushing back against it, because you're trying to replace 20 different processes at once. You're far better off going, we're going to carve out the core of the sales process, and that's going to be phase one, and we're going to get people up and running in the system, even if it's not everyone in the company, but the core sales team and a few managers and some admins, for example.
Yep.
And so I think one of the reasons it fails is people overcomplicate the setup, the CRM.
Yep.
Some CRM systems, Salesforce, for example, just complicated, full stop.
Yes. I mean, I can't remember if it was this episode or not, but we're talking about like you have to have an expert on your team to run it, let alone having somebody that you pay externally. And if that person goes, that's problematic.
Salesforce has its place, but that place is probably about 2008, I'd say. Honestly, like for some industries where there are specifically engineered existing setups that are so niche, and those setups exist inside of Salesforce, then 100% that's the right option for you. It is just such a minuscule part of the broader business community that I think anyone sort of like, if you're a typical business, like everyday business, and you're going to set up a sales CRM, Salesforce would be at the wrong end of a very long list. And so to come back to your question, it's the complexity that stops adoption as well.
Yeah, for sure. Because if you don't get buy-in from your team, whether that's because they're finding it just too hard to use because it's too complex, or if they don't understand why you're rolling it out, I suppose that's another big factor. You've got to have that buy-in from the right people. Like you said, if you're going to roll it out for only some of them, it needs to be like the core people who are going to use it are the ones that have to have some input during the implementation process. And if they haven't had that, they can dig their heels in if they're stubborn.
Yeah. And look, some people are under the impression that businesses implement a CRM to keep tabs on them. And that's not why businesses implement a CRM. They implement it so that they can have better data segmentation, less leads fall through the cracks, their reporting is better, and all those benefits we've spoken about ad nauseum. But some people, especially old school salespeople, are under the impression it's about keeping tabs on them. And it's just not. But if you haven't communicated properly to your team about why you're implementing a CRM, they will default to, it's so they can check up on me. But it's not the case.
It's an us and them thing, isn't it? It's a mentality that doesn't work in these businesses, and especially a CRM is about bringing all of your processes together in one place. And so if you have that us and them, it's not going to work, right?
Yeah. At the end of the day, I think a CRM is about making the lives of your salespeople easier, right? If we're talking about a sales CRM, right? It's about making the lives of your salespeople easier so that they can do their job in a better fashion.
Definitely.
And if that is the way that the project is introduced to the team, and you get buy-in on that exact result or outcome that you're looking for, which is to improve the working lives of the salespeople, then you will genuinely get buy-in from the team.
Yes, definitely. And I guess there's a few other things that we could probably talk about in terms of why CRM implementations fail that we don't personally come across because it's not how we operate. But things like no ongoing support or training, that's going to lead to, a bad result, right?
Yeah, because you don't get everything right the first time round. No one does. There's always small changes, or sometimes large, that need to be made when, as we said before, when the rubber hits the road as far as CRM going live. And you will need to make changes. So you do need a little bit of ongoing support. It doesn't have to be significant, but it just needs to be there so that you have the confidence to be able to go ask the question or say, hey, this isn't quite working for us. What should we do here? And so, yes, that support is critical.
Very important. The other thing that's a big factor, I'm sure you would agree, is data and how good it is, right? I think I've heard you say this before, garbage in, garbage out, right? Like, we've got to make sure.
Dirty data kills CRMs. It's just...
So that's something that I know you guys do really well, is making sure that in the process that the data is going to be good, because it's no good you guys rolling it out if then it's not going to be effective for them. But that's a factor.
in the last episode, we spoke a little bit around this type of stuff. And I think that from a data perspective, we have a data team, about 8 people in the data team, and we do a lot of deduplication, a lot of merging of databases from different platforms and things like that, importing them into Pipedrive, Monday, and that type of thing. And if the team doesn't have confidence in the data the day that they go live, then again, that adoption it's going to kill the adoption.
Yeah.
And so it's equally as important as training, because you know what? It actually makes training easier, because when someone sees their customer, their own customer, and that person in the system with that phone number and everything, they're like, oh, and it orientates them in the system, right?
Yes.
So now I understand now, I'm pointing the right way. I get this because I recognize the data in front of me.
Absolutely.
And so that does make it easier from an adoption perspective as well.
It's not theory anymore. It's real life. They can actually see it roll out. Yeah, for sure. And I guess, there's an interesting stat that I found out before this episode, and it's that most sources put CRM failure rates at between 30 and 70%. So it's really not a rare occurrence. It's actually quite high. And I think that's really that adoption factor. And it does come down to the right setup, which conveniently leads to my next question. Should you use an implementation partner or do it yourself? I feel like the answer is obvious, but let's dive into it anyway, shall we?
Yeah, the answer is obvious. Like, you should, right? Even if you're experienced with CRM, you should be focusing on your core business rather than trying to build yourself. But look, I get the use case of, hey, I've set up CRMs before. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to set up my own pipeline, a few activity types, a few lost reasons, and I can import data, bang, ready to go. And look, if that's the case, what I would do in that situation is try to hire someone who's an expert on whatever platform it is that you're implementing for at least a few hours, so that you don't make the obvious mistakes, because it is very easy to get bogged down in using a platform not the way that it's designed to be used. It might feel intuitive. So go ahead and do stuff yourself if you're capable of it. But less than 1% of people really have that ability,
that expertise.
That expertise, right?
Yeah. So I guess we agree. Bringing in an expert is a good idea. And we would obviously, in most cases, recommend Motii as being the best option. But if we were to zoom out, what would you suggest people look for in a partner?
Oh, okay. You do want a bit of a track record, right? I think that's important. If you can find someone that's a thing, like Motii's very strong in, let's say, the construction industry, right? And we have some fantastic solutions because we've done it 100 times, like literally 100 times.
Yeah.
And so you probably do want an agency who has a bit of experience in your space and is not sort of learning on the go. Sometimes that's not possible, right? If you sell some niche product to some niche group in some brand new sector, sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But yeah, I think an agency with the runs on the board who seems to be at the cutting edge and has worked within your industry, I think those are probably 3 things that I would go looking for. Having a look at case studies.
That's what we would have looked at as well. Like you said, we brought on the experts for when it comes to intercom. So you're looking for somebody who's got track record in the industry, certified, or obviously recognized by the
and so we checked because we're intercom partners as well, right? We checked, hey, who would you recommend in this space given what we're trying to do? And so we got some recommendations as well. So I think,
and I guess the other thing I was going to just say is you just want to have that ongoing support model too. You want to have somebody that you can still reach out to post implementation, like for the adoption, for upgrades, for maintenance, for just general support and training. New team members come in, all that. You want to still have a relationship with the partner that you do bring on, even if you're not regularly using them. You want to have that relationship, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the thing about working with a business that does have a few departments, right? So, for example, at Motii, I work predominantly in sales. We have a pretty decent sized implementation team, but we also have a support team. We have our data guys. We have our sort of developers separate to our automation specialists. And so not saying that you need to be sort of 30 people like what Motii is, but I would be wary of the one-man bands, one-woman bands, because it's very easy. And having, as you said before, I sort of founded Motii, right? And the first little bit, working almost on my own or with myself and Amber, and it's very easy for us to, in those days, get a job done, move on to the next shiny thing, and maybe not be as responsive from a support perspective, nowhere near as responsive as what Motii is these days, right? Because we were really stretched from a resource perspective of trying to balance everything. And so I wouldn't go with a massive agency, because I think sort of like, unless you've got an unlimited budget, some of the really big players, they charge a lot of money and you can get lost amongst it. And so I think the sweet spot is sort of like between 10 and 40 sort of thing. Like I'd like to sit with an agency in that bracket, I reckon.
Yeah. Yeah. Where you're a person and there's a relationship, you're not a number.
Yeah.
Like in the big ones.
And everyone in the business
sure.
knows the company and the person at the company and has a relatively good idea of, that's their setup, these are the integrations.
Yeah.
And so you've got a pretty good idea of what's gone on in there. And I can picture most of our clients' setups without needing to go into the system. And I know their industry and I know a few of their staff and stuff like that.
Yeah. 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 That's massive. That's massive. And I guess that's the thing, just circling back to what we do at Motii and the benefits of having that partner set up is if you do it right in the beginning, you're not undoing it 6 months later, but you might be tweaking it. And then you've got that ongoing support and the ability to evolve with it over time. Because we kind of pretend that it's not a set and done thing. It's not. But you don't want to be undoing it like we were talking about those other corporate, huge, big products where you're like, oh, this was a mistake and we've got to start from scratch. But you do need to know that it will evolve over time.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Yep. And I think the nice thing about the products that we work with, so Monday, Pipedrive, Intercom, PandaDoc, they're all sort of latest generation software that is flexible, easy to iterate upon, and you're not stuck in, let's say you've gone down a certain path, let's say in Dynamics, for example, and to reverse is difficult or impossible. Like if you do make a mistake and you do get something wrong, these smaller, more nimble products are definitely the way to go, because you do have much more flexibility if a mistake has been made.
Yeah, and that's huge. Definitely.
Don't choose some little niche product that is only made in Australia and built for people who are in the western suburbs of Brisbane, right? It's not going to grow and scale with you. Yeah.
And I think even though it feels like we got sidetracked, it all does come back into, when you are somebody who's done 1,000 implementations and 5,000 demos. Yeah.
5,000 demos, yep.
You do know. That's the thing. And that once again comes back to the benefit of bringing an expert in, is that you've got insights that may not seem super obvious at the beginning, but it's valuable, super valuable information that makes a big difference. So yeah, I think it's been useful, even if we did go off on a little tangent. That's cool. But in our next mini episode, we will be pulling back the curtain on the actual process of what a CRM implementation looks like, how long it usually takes.
Okay.
Once again, how long is a piece of string? And what you can do to set yourself up before you even speak to anybody. And that one might be a trick question too, because I know how you feel about that. But anyway, we will see.
I do have an answer for that, but let's leave that for the next episode.
Exactly. But we will leave that for the next episode. But thank you very much for joining me, Ben, and thank you for listening as well. Bye for now.
Cheers. Thanks for having me, Katie. See you, everyone.
That's it for another episode of the Motii Playbook. One shift, one system, one measurable improvement. All information shared in this podcast is general in nature. For tailored advice specific to your business, visit motii.co/playbook and book a momentum call with our team. See you next time.